and welcome to another episode of Don't Shit on the Bus podcast. I am Adam Elmakais coming at you all the way from Los Angeles, California. And today we have the wonderful Danny Kurily on the podcast. Now, Danny and I have been friends for a long time. And although he is no longer touring, I am very confident that he has a lot of good lessons, tips, tricks, all the good stuff. He's got it. And you know, although I've been friends with him for a while, I've even photographed his wedding, not once, but twice. I just really haven't had a chance to sit down and seriously talk to him about his journey this in depth. And you know, he went from working locally in Michigan to touring with an artist, to touring with All Time Low, to working for Pete Wentz, to touring again, and then eventually getting off the road and starting his own house management company in LA. And now the connecting part that kind of holds all this together is how good Danny is at not only identifying where and what he needs to be doing in his career, but figuring out why he needs to be doing it and the network, kind of navigating his network and who can help him get to the next place he wants to be. And it's a constant battle of, all right, what do I want to do? What do I feel like doing right now? What fulfills me? Balancing all these things and eventually coming up with your career. Because music is different than other careers. You know, people aren't usually here because it's just what they ended up doing. They're here because they have intention and they want to do this. And they're in a place where everything they're doing is almost just as much fun as it is hard work. So because of that, you need to kind of always reevaluate, figure out where you need to go. How are you going to get on tour? And more importantly, at some point in your life, how are you going to get off tour? What's your escape strategy? Because it's a pretty strenuous life and serves a purpose, but it might not be your end game. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy the interview this week with Danny Kurily. He has a lot of good thoughts and I enjoyed learning from him. But before we get to the episode, I just want to give a shout out as always to our new patrons. Thank you so much, Joelle and Christiana. Yeah, I'm sorry if I get those names wrong. You know, we've got people from all over the world signing up for the Patreon. Thank you so much. You know, it keeps us ad-free. It helps pay Connor so he can edit all of this and make it sound nice. And hopefully, eventually, I'll be able to get some mics and do this in real life post-COVID. You know, LA, we're still moving out of COVID phase. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Don't Shit on the Bus podcast. Your place to go if you want to learn everything and anything about working in the music industry, both on and off the road, mostly on the road, but off the road too. All right, take care now. All right, welcome to the podcast, my friend Danny. How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I've listened to a lot of these and like seen all the posts and stuff, so it's cool that I get to be on it.
Hell yeah. It's cool to have you here. Did you see who I had on last week?
Brooke, yeah, she gave me the heads up. She was like, hey, make sure you look good. Like, it's recorded, it's on video. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That's why I'm late, because I had to shower.
No, it's all good. Yeah. I guess I don't really tell people it's on video, and maybe I should. I just assume people know, and I should probably be like, hey, we record audio and video, just so you know. It's just hard. We're not in person, you know? I've never done an in-person one yet. We'll do it.
Right.
So you're probably the person I've hung out with the most during COVID, and that is because you got married twice during COVID.
And you were at both of them.
I was at both of them.
Adam was more than generous enough to take photos of something that's not touring related. And so I think when I first asked you, I was pretty nervous that you were going to be like, nah, it's not my thing, which is fine. But I just always have loved the way that your photos. I mean, if you've ever been to my house, you know that I have like a bunch of your stuff like hanging up in my home just randomly. And I don't know, like I just really loved how your stuff always like seemed to tell a story. Even like when we were on tour, there's like such a good sense of emotion conveyed in it. And it was just, I mean, it was so rad that you were able to do it. And I mean, we love everything that you put out.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know how to communicate to people like, hey, I will shoot things that are important to you. I think people are like in the position of you, and it's a shame, but also I understand, and we're pretty close, so I'm happy you asked me. But anybody else who's not as close probably never would. So if you hear this,
I think
just
people
ask.
Like just don't want to offend you. They're like, oh, like he's like the touring guy. He's like out with Diplo. Like, why is he gonna come photograph my wedding?
Yeah, I think the thing that I like to do, and I think the thing that you like to do too, is you like to work for people who care about what they're doing. You know,
absolutely.
And the cool thing is, you know, it was cool photographing your wedding, but we didn't realize, or I didn't realize, at least I never like put it down in front of me, how many things we've done together in the world. Yeah. Even though we've never really hung out, not on tour.
Yeah, no, I mean, to think about all the places that we've also, like Australia, we've been together. I think we've been to Japan together.
Not Japan, UK.
UK, okay.
UK, Europe.
I mean, you've stayed at my house a couple times when I lived in different places.
I've met your parents. I met your dogs.
That's true. Seen my other house, my old house, my mom's house.
I went to your, this is kind of random, but just through chance, I was at Danny's first date with his now wife.
Photograph that as well.
Yeah, and then I photographed their engagement photos. But that was planned. I wasn't like, oh, I'm at the beach and they're getting engaged. We've planned that. And then their wedding. So we have like all these moments in life. It's, I don't know, TLDR, Danny and I are close because of random events. But it is cool. We've toured everywhere together. And I think that's the theme of most of the people that I get on here. I'm like, hey, we've toured all over together. I kind of know a good amount about you, but I never really have an excuse or a reason to sit down and be like, so let's go deeper on these serious topics of your life.
Yeah, deep dive.
So that's what we'll do today.
Let's rip it.
And, you know, when we were hanging out, like, what was it? Like, it's a month ago now, which is crazy. But when we were hanging out for your wedding, which is a month ago, we were talking about kind of how you got started. And I think there's a lot of value in going over how everybody got started on the podcast, because so many people come from so many different areas and want to get into this industry. But a lot of people, specifically, this is for you, Herberto from the Discord, but some people wanted to know, like, well, I want to know too, like, what did your life look like before you toured? Like, can you paint a picture of, this is Danny in Michigan?
Michigan Danny. It was pretty calm, I think. I was going to a community college, studying general business. I didn't really know like what I wanted to do, but I thought this was at least like a good path to kind of go down to figure out maybe I'll get a degree and something will spark my interest. I was super involved at the church that I was going to, like making content for them. And that was like a kind of a cool outlet to be creative on that sense of things. And then, I mean, music was always like a pretty big part of my life. You know, I'd go to shows, a lot of like local shows. The Michigan local scene, like back in the day, it was something like super special because you could draw like 1,000 kids to a hall show on like like every weekend. And so it was just kind of like its own, you know, when people say like the scene, like it definitely like was one.
I just want to quick define something for people who are listening and maybe not from the States. But a hall, I know what it is because I'm from Wisconsin, which is kind of close. Yeah. It's like a hall is like a thing for veterans, right?
Yeah, like Knights of Columbus is one. I mean, basically all it is like a large room, usually has like some type of built-in like stage and then like a shit bar somewhere.
And you could rent it.
Like you put up like the security deposit and then like it's yours for the night. And so, yeah, basically like people would front the money. They'd put these bands on the bill and then charge people at the door, and you would just pack. I mean, it was a giant fire hazard. Like, I don't know how we got away with it. And
yeah, they'd shut it down these days.
So yeah, I was super involved with that. And then, I mean, honestly, I was dating this girl at the time that I thought maybe I would eventually get married to her. And it ended up going like very sour, very fast. And it was one of those points in my life where I was like, I don't want to be in Michigan anymore. Like, I can't be in Michigan. I basically was trying to figure out like how to get on tour. And one of the big things that I did was I would go to these shows, bigger shows, like 1,000 cap, 1,400 cap rooms. And I basically would just like volunteer for the bands. Like I would be like an unpaid runner.
Wait, how's that work? How do you do you just walk up to them and you're like, hey, I'm here to work for you today, whether you like it or not?
Kind of, yeah. You just say like, hey, like, you know, I have a car. I'm from around here. Like, I don't know if you guys have a runner, but I'm more than happy to like do errands or like whatever you guys need. Like, I don't have, and usually it goes with like, I don't have tickets to the show or vice versa. Yeah. And so like, I ended up working for, like, I worked for Panic. I went and got them pizza at like this Clutch Cargo show for 1,200 people. Hello Goodbye, like went to Guitar Center and did things for them, like helped them like load trailers and stuff. I mean, I wasn't trying to get paid. I was just trying to like learn, I guess, in a weird way.
Get closer to bands or closer to where you want to be, right?
Yeah, like in hopes that someone would be like, oh, this guy's cool. Like we should hire him or take him on tour. And that like never happened, but at least it gave me like a little bit of experience to like kind of understand what it's like, you know, in a small sense. And then basically that can kind of continued on. And so then thanks to LiveJournal, I ended up meeting someone that knew someone that knew someone, and I ended up finding out that the Rocket Summer was going on the Alternative Press Tour. This was 2008, and I somehow convinced them to hire me as like an extra guitar tech. That's basically was like the starting point.
That's crazy. So like a little bit of a backtrack before you get to this Rocket Summer thing, but when you're working, I'm assuming you're working jobs in Michigan and you wanted to go on the road. Was there a moment where you ever had to talk to your bosses, or you just kind of, it sounds like you're just kind of doing what worked for you, right? You weren't like planning it.
Yeah, kind of just like doing what worked. I mean, I worked retail too, so it was like pretty easy to kind of like request time off for like whatever it is. And back then, like, you know, I did a tour with Every Avenue back in the day, like a couple van tours and stuff. Oh, yeah. And so like those tours were never really longer than like 3 weeks, you know, like you can only get so far in a van before you have to come back when you don't have like proper routing and funding. It was never really like an extended period of time. So usually like my jobs would be cool with like, hey, I just need like this time off. Just like you have to give somebody else for like school or summer vacation.
Just take a little time. It's like, it's not like you're going somewhere to be irresponsible. Like I need to work, but I'm going to work somewhere else. Like on my big plan. Improve
myself.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're trying to figure out how to balance it, it might, if your boss says no, then it might involve getting a new job. But if they say yes, then cool. You know, you gotta figure it out.
Working retail, I knew wasn't going to be my end game.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like I got a discount on clothes, and you know, it was fun to talk to people. But yeah, I would say like try to find a job that gives you a little bit of flexibility, especially if you're trying to like look into other things. You know, like you don't want like a 9 to 5.
No, I know what you're saying. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, that makes more sense. I just love knowing where people come from and kind of how they made their leap into touring. And then, you know, after you got out with the Rocket Summer, had you done van tours with Every Avenue prior to that?
So I did like I did a summer with them. And then like the next, I guess the fall was when the Rocket Summer tour was.
When you were on that tour, was tour what you had imagined, or what was it like relative to what you thought it was going to be?
At the time, it blew everything out of the water. It was like a 10 out of 10, like cloud 9, because it was like things that I always had wanted to do, but never had the opportunity to do it. And so like, you know, by them giving me this platform or opportunity, like, how can you not be like over the moon to experience? And it was the first time that I was experiencing all these things. So like every venue was the best venue ever. Like Soma was insane. And it's like, no, it's not. Like it's a shithole, but like
it's a movie theater.
Exactly. The first time you're there, you're like, this is incredible.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay. So you go out, you get on the road, and everything's blowing your mind because you're like, this is everything I've always wanted to do. You know, I'm with the bands. I'm part of, you know, making the show happen. From there, then I'm sure there was a moment where that kind of maybe not died down, but, you know, they were no longer first, right? There became these things that became normals. What became your next kind of goal for yourself? Like what became the thing that started pushing you forward to work with bigger artists?
So it kind of, my experience is a little different in the sense of like, after I worked for Rocket Summer, I went right to All Time Low. And that was back like right when I kind of feel like they were starting to take off. And so it was a very organic growth in that sense, because like the rooms were getting bigger because they were growing in popularity, which meant like I also got to experience new things because of it, like those new rooms, those larger crowds, things like that. So, I think everybody's goal as you get further and further into it is obviously you want to eventually get to like an arena level or like an amphitheater level. A stadium if you're, you know, really swinging for the fences. But I think like from a tech standpoint, you kind of base your success based on the rooms that you're in.
Yeah.
And so I guess like my next step would be like, how do we get to a bigger room? How do we, you know, do all these things? It just so like coincidentally with All Time Low, it kind of happened at the same time. So like it didn't necessarily, I didn't have to have a reason to look for another band because they were kind of fulfilling everything that I was hoping to achieve.
You were growing with the artist, right? Like they were slowly getting bigger and you were getting the same amount, quote unquote, bigger because what was that like growing with the artist? How did that affect your job being on the road?
It was cool. Yeah, definitely. I think it's kind of like a backwards thing in a way, because you would think like, oh, like the show gets bigger, like obviously like you have more responsibilities and things like that. And it's kind of like the opposite. And it's like, no, like, all of a sudden, like we're working with more money, like we can hire more people, like one bus goes to two bus goes to a truck. And so like life kind of starts to like smooth out a little bit more. You're not pushing cases through the snow into a trailer, like you have your truck backed into the dock. Like the bigger the band gets, like the easier your job gets. But I also feel like the level that you're expected to function at also, like the bar's raised. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the impact of your job is much bigger.
Like if a show goes like bad for 500 people, you're like, well, that kind of sucked. But like if something like very bad happens during a show for 5,000 people, like that's a big deal. And so I think you're just like the level of performance is much higher.
So yeah, I mean, we kind of refer to it as like scaling. Like the bigger the tour gets, the more defined each job gets, right? Like all you're doing is guitar teching. So if all you're doing is guitar teching, you better do it perfectly. And
you're paid it's supposed to be perfect every night. So like you do everything in your power to make sure that it happens.
No, that makes sense. All right. So you're growing with the band and they kind of get bigger. Then what do you as a guitar tech have to do? As you're saying, your job gets more important. What's it like? Maybe you can speak to just being a crew member, but what's it like trying to make sure that you are up to date and that your skills scale with the band? Because I think that's a very real thing. I've definitely seen what people refer to as growing pains, where, the band gets bigger, maybe not as steadily as All Time Low, and all of a sudden, all new crew, because their crew just couldn't keep on top.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think it's one of those things that a lot of bands, like early on, they kind of don't necessarily know that there's like this big database of like good people available. And so they're like, oh, like, John, our friend, can tune, like he plays guitar, so he can definitely be the guitar tech.
Yeah.
And it's, there's definitely like a learning curve that not everybody makes it past, like you need to be able to like learn what you're doing. And not that you need to be like the best at your job, but I think you need to be the best for your artist.
Yeah.
And know like what that fit is and know what their needs are and how to like deliver for them. Because, they're your boss at the end of the day. Something that was really big that helped me when I was touring was when we would be on these support tours. We did a couple of support tours with Green Day, one with Fall Out Boy, to kind of talk to those techs that have been around for a bit longer. And, majority of them are really nice guys. And if you kind of go into it, like an open ask, like, hey, if you have time, like, would you be willing to help me with this?
Not right before the show.
Yeah. Like, oh, hey, can you just do this real quick? I know you're about to go on. But, to pick somebody's brain that has, way more experience than you in years more of knowledge, to ask them, why do you do this way? I think can just shine like a lot of light on what works for them and why they do it this way and have been doing it for so long.
No, that makes sense. I like that there is that camaraderie once you're out on the road. Like, hey, I'm open to learning. And you said the majority of them are good people, which I will assume meant you have met your share of not good people.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people just aren't super friendly always, and they look at it as a very like distinct job. I guess that works for them. It pays the bills and everything. But yeah, not everybody is down to help out like the new kid in school.
Like, obviously, we'd all love to get help, but it's definitely your choice. And no hate, if that's how you roll, that's how you roll. And while we're talking, I'll probably have said in the intro, but, you were guitar teching through this time. I actually don't know, and I really want to know, what else did you do on the road before you got off the road? Like, didn't you have other jobs?
Yeah.
What'd you do?
I basically was a guitar tech for a majority of my touring career. And then kind of as we developed more, I got into the VIP side of things and did that for Demi Lovato. And that kind of got me into pop and Fall Out Boy. And then I kind of went back to All Time Low and worked for them as an assistant tour manager, which was more like kind of movements and stuff, like more directly with the band and like more logistics than tech standpoint. My job was less of the actual show and more of like the pre and post.
Making sure everything went smoothly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it sounds like, you went in with not too much experience or just enough to get you out on the road. And then you learned how to tech. And then from there, you learned how to run VIP, which I imagine was a whole another skill set. And then you learned kind of how to work specifically with the artist, right? You have to be with them a lot when you're assistant tour manager. And it's like a whole nother skill set. With those skill sets, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here because I'm kind of guessing, before we get into how you eventually turned this into having a job off the road, what were you doing before you did that? Didn't you have some other jobs in LA? I don't know if
Yeah. So when we were actually on tour with Fall Out Boy, All Time Low, Fall Out Boy, Cobra, Metro Station, Hey Monday, that Believers Never Die Part 2 tour, right before Fall Out Boy went on hiatus, I became friends with Wentz's assistant at the time, and she was a makeup artist by trade and was like, I'm going back. I want to do makeup. Like, that's like where my passion is. And so I got the idea in my head. I'd always wanted to live in Los Angeles, right? I mean, thanks to like the OC and a couple other things, like it just seemed like the place to be. And so I kind of had this thought in my head, like this would get me there. Like if I got this job working for P, I would live in LA, like it'd be a different thing. And like, this would obviously like cure all of my problems. And so I kind of like campaigned for it really hard.
What's that mean? What's it mean to campaign for it really hard? Like, tell me what that means.
Campaign for it really hard. So I think you need to like put yourself in, a big thing of it is manifestation, 100%. Like if you want something, like you need to like convince your brain that you're going to get this job. And you're going to do everything that's possible to get the job. And then I think the rest of it is, from a campaign aspect, is like making sure you're kind of like working on those relationships. So it's like, this was the first time I was meeting Pete. So like, I wanted to like kind of become friends with him, or, work on these things that kind of shine me in a good light. Same thing with like becoming better friends with the assistant at the time. Like, I want her to know that like I, am respectful. I'm a hard worker. I get, if I say I'm going to do something, I get it done, just to kind of like prove all those points home. And then you just kind of like help reiterate like, hey, like, I think this would be a really good fit for me.
You're like trying out all the time. You're like,
hey. Like you got to sell yourself, like make it worth someone's while, that they're like, this is the obvious choice of who I want to.
I'm picturing you. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just got so excited. I'm just picturing you while you're saying this, like at a big arena, you're working for All Time Low, and like Pete's like walking to catering, and you're waiting around the corner, and you're like waiting for him to come. And right as he comes by, you're like doing something. Yeah. Like, like it's just like, you're like making situations. I know it wasn't
we should eat together.
Yeah. Hey man, what are you doing later? Playing a show? Me too. No, that's awesome. So you ended up getting that job, right?
Yeah. I worked for him for about a year and a half. And it was cool. It was, like, I mean, honestly, like pretty crazy. Like we lived in Beverly Hills, and it was definitely like a different life. I mean, coming from a small town in Michigan to like proper Los Angeles, like it's a very quick adjustment. Looking back on it now, I think I was too young to really, I was 24 when I took it. Too young to really appreciate it. I don't think I had a good enough home base in LA. Like I had been there a couple times because of tour, but I didn't have like any like really good friends. And so it became like a very lonely job in a way, because it was like, you're working for him, but obviously like once that work day is done, he's going to go do his thing. You're going to go do your thing. And so I just didn't really have like that good friend group that I could be like, oh, cool, I'm going to go out tonight. So like a lot of times, like I stayed home alone, and like all these things that were like fun, but I think it like lost a little bit of like the shininess once you're in it. And I don't think I was ready to be done with touring then. You know what I mean? Like I thought that this was like the next step in my life and career, but there was just a lot more stuff that I ended up seeing on tour that I'm glad I saw. And I think it's also one of those things that a lot of the times when you take a new position, it's almost like that grass is greener syndrome in a way. Like I took this job and I was like, oh, like this will be like super awesome. And that was like the time that like Instagram and Twitter kind of started to pop off and things. And so when I wasn't out touring, I would see all my friends touring, and they're out at a bar or like, this great show. And it's like, oh, like I kind of want to be doing that because I miss that, and so I think if you're gonna leave a tour, I think you should just make sure that you're ready to leave it.
And we'll definitely get into, I want to talk more about that, but I want to just ask about the job you had in LA. Are you happy that did you learn a bunch of skills that you could then apply to tour? Because it sounded like it was almost like being an assistant tour manager, but at home, like in one place.
Kind of. I mean, it was definitely like call it a personal assistant, call it like a personal day-to-day manager or whatever. I mean, whatever title you want to like put on it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I took from it for assistant tour managing. I think the nice thing is that it elevated again. Like I just keep going back to that. Like it elevates like the expectation. Like it's like, oh, like we have to have like these cars need to be ready and like the greeters at the airport and, this movement and, like, do you have everything that you need for this trip? And we're going to go this way and do this thing and have these flights booked. And so
a lot of work. Even just ordering dinner was a lot of work, right? I remember you would just have to like call places and order a few different meals.
Yeah. On tour. I mean, on tour as an ATM, like you basically handled like all of after show. And like at the time when I was doing it for All Time Low, there was like 30 people on tour. And so it's like, oh, like cool. Like not only will I get like all the band's food, but then I also have to get like all the food for the crew. And then I also like have to make sure that the buses are iced and that everybody has beverages and stage coolers are full. And like, like to oversee everything, it's like a lot of like grunt work, and it's definitely like not, like super posh and spicy, but like there's so many people that depend on what you do to make sure that like their day or their show goes well. And so I think it's just kind of like always you have the mindset that like whatever you're doing or whoever you're doing it for, like, how do I elevate this to the next level? Like, how do I, after these, previous experiences with Pete, like, how do I bring that to like All Time Low? So like it's better for them this time around, like what can I do to make it better?
No, that makes sense. I'm just processing. I mean, it's something that I've always noticed about you, or maybe not always noticed, but learned to notice, is that you're very good at doing things that benefit your community, whether it be you're the best person at hanging pictures in a house or making a place look nice, or, setting up you're just like, oh, this is sick. Danny set this up. And I think that's it's cool to elevate your friends like that, because not everybody is that thoughtful. And I hope that, was the assistant TM job fulfilling? I feel like it's cool to do all that stuff for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a very task oriented person. Like I get a lot of joy, like out of being able to complete something and be like, I did that. Yeah. And so in that aspect, it was awesome because all of my stuff was task oriented. I think from me working for the band, anytime that you can make anybody's experience on tour a better experience, you're going to get a better result. If your crew dudes, like if you have the stage coolers to ice, so like your crew guys can have a beer during the show,
nice,
like, and that makes their set that much better. It's like, cool, like I did that. Like, oh, like if we're gonna like light candles an hour before the band comes in, so like the room smells nice and like everything's set out in the way that they want. Like if that makes that better for them, like cool, like that means the show's gonna be better. If you're in a better mood, like. So I think it's just always about like creating a better environment for whoever you're working for, and just doing that at like the best of the ability that you have, because the end result will always be better.
I like that. Okay. So you work for Pete, you're in LA, and you see people on Instagram, you're like, I need to go back on tour. I know that you ended up going back on tour because I saw you doing it.
We went on tour.
I was there. I swear. I got photos, proof. And you're touring, and I'm sure then you start to experience, maybe not the grass is greener, but as you get older, you move into your mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s. To use your words, when did you feel that the shininess of tour kind of started to wear off? And what did that feel like going through your heads? Maybe things that popped out, or?
I think a lot of it is the grind of, I think as you get older, the flights and like the early lobby calls get a little bit less fun. You know what I mean? Like to like, oh, like cool. We did this show, like loadout got done at like midnight. Like we have a, 5 a.m. lobby to fly to someplace. I think that's where it kind of starts to like get a little bit, less shiny in a way. It's just, as you get older, like the hangovers get worse, thing gets a little bit harder. And so I also think a part of it too is when you go, and this sounds like a bit douchey, but like you go around the world like so many times and you're like, oh cool, like I'm in Japan again and like it's fun, but like in some capacity it does get repetitive, you know what I mean? Like we're in this room again, we're playing this place again. Like, it's nice because you know, like, all the spots around the venue and things like that that you can go to. But I think the allure or like the appeal of like, oh, this is a new experience, it's not there anymore. And so I think like in that aspect, it kind of becomes a little bit less like wow factor, because like you know exactly what it's going to be like going in.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, you know, when you first got on tour, the level of new experiences decreases. And with that, you know, the wow factor decreases. So, you know, I've been on tour, you've been on tour, and we can both agree that it's quite euphoric almost being on the road. Like you're almost high every day.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about drugs. I'm just talking about the feeling. And then you get home and it's gone. And it almost like shocks you. And maybe you can put that in your own words, but do you feel that tour is addicting, or there's some part of it that was hard to kind of let go of?
Yeah, I think my mom. Okay, so
where's this going?
Tour to me it's almost like in a weird way. Like I've heard it kind of be compared to like almost like a Neverland,
Okay.
Not the ranch, but more of like the Peter Pan aspect side of things, where it's like you don't in a way like have to grow up. Like you have very limited like responsibility to some extent. You know what I mean? Like you have a job that you do, and assuming you can do that job, like you're pretty much free and clear. You also get paid a good amount of money and have very little overhead. You know, like you have catering, you have bus stock, you have buyouts. So in a way, like if you're smart, you don't really spend any money when you're on tour. And so my mom always used to call it the golden handcuffs, because if you kind of convert like the amount of money that you make on tour or the amount of money that you can take home from tour versus like a job that you have to go into every day, like they're vastly different from like the amount of hours you would have to work at a normal job to like what touring is.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a very big allure to people, because it gives them this financial freedom that they wouldn't be able to attain in any other sense. And then they also get a couple weeks off here and there to like do absolutely nothing. Like when you're not on tour, like you don't have that, like you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so that's like a super cool thing for people. Like you can travel, you could just not leave your room, you could veg out, like it doesn't matter. That's why I think why touring is so fun, because like when you're out there, and this is obviously just my experience, but you know, with the people and the artists and groups that I've toured with, it's always been a very good camp. And that's also, I think, a very big part of the whole circus is if you can travel the world and rip shows and do these things with people that you like, then it's just going to be so much more fun and so much more of an enjoyable thing. And I mean, you know, it like becomes like a family, and it's fun to see stuff with your friends. You know, like that's a definite game changer in the whole grand scheme of things.
Yeah. So it's a fun work environment. And just to maybe articulate the things you said, or like how I was putting it together in my head, you know, when you start out, you're going on tour, and I'm thinking these words up as I go here, so I might fumble a little bit. But when you start out, you go on tour and everything's fun, and you compare it to a normal job. Let's say you work, 40 hours a week at a normal job. On tour, you're really only working 3 hours a day or 5 hours a day or something like that.
Sure.
But then as you continue to tour, you've been doing it for 5 years, 10 years, it feels like you're not working 5 to 10 hours a day. It feels like you're working 17 hours a day, because everything that used to be fun and a first time thing is now part of the job.
Yeah.
And it loses its shininess, it seems like.
Yeah. It dulls.
It dulls. And I'm sure
tarnishes. I'm not trying to figure out like what metal does when.
Well, we've all met those people that on tour, at least not we've all, me and you have met these people on tour who are significantly older than us, or sometimes, might be a similar age to us now in their 30s. But to me, they were always 40s, 50s, who are not pleasant people to be around. And I've always wondered, I was like, how do you end up there? And I think that when tour loses its shininess and you don't get off tour, you might end up there.
Yeah, I think you can definitely, in a way, like box yourself in, you know what I mean? And I don't think that's to anybody's, like, I don't think anyone's to blame for it, you know what I mean? Like, but I think eventually if you do the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to do that thing for probably the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And that's like, that was like the kind of like the tipping point for me when I started to at least have those feelings of like, do I want to be doing this the rest of my life? Like, cool, like 25, like it's cool. 30, yeah, this is still fun. Like, as we get older, it's like, oh, like, do I want to be doing this when I'm 40? Do I want to be doing this when I'm 50?
Yeah.
Like, what else do I want to achieve out of like life or goals that like, would this hinder me from doing that?
Yeah, it sounds like, when you started or when anybody starts, it's like, okay, I want to tour. I get on tour. I'm doing this thing. It's my job. That's all I've got in life, right? I just got this job. And then as you get older or you progress in life or you take a step back and have more of this big picture, mature understanding, you say, okay, but what about a family? What about health? What about me? What, you start getting all these other values. Did you start having those thoughts on tour, or when did that start occurring for you? Because I know you don't tour anymore, at least not consistently.
Yeah, not like full. I'll pop a gig every once in a while.
Yeah, just take a little fun. Oh, we're going to Japan. Let's go.
So basically what happened, I feel like the tipping point for me was when I was out with Demi Lovato. That was definitely an functioning like team, very high end. These people were very good at what they did. But with, being very good at what you do, I think you also have to be doing it for a while to be that good. And so that was kind of like one of the first times where I had different crew members that were nowhere near my demo. Like All Time Low was always like, we were all within like a pretty small age gap. So it was like easy to like hang out with these people. And as you get on the different tours, it gets a little bit vaster of an age gap. And these dudes that have been doing it for so long, some of them have families, and I got to kind of see like, oh, like that's difficult, man. Like you don't, like we're out all year. Like you're not going to see your kids like ever. A lot at all. I mean, some have like all of these things. And I think it was the first time in my touring career where it kind of gave me some perspective, because I had never seen that with All Time Low or the artists before that, because we weren't in that stage of our lives. Like we were just like, we want to hang out. We want to have fun. We want to see the world. And then this was like, oh, like this is like your job. Like this is like your career.
This is your 9 to 5.
Exactly. And so, seeing it firsthand and some of, the hardships that some of these people had to go through in order to like provide for their families was a bit of an eye opener, in the sense of like, wow, like that seems really difficult to do. I was lucky enough randomly. I met Caroline, my wife, on tour. I met her on Demi. And so that was a cool thing, in the sense of like, we got to like date.
Yeah, that's a cool thing.
Very cool thing. We had to like keep it under wraps. Like we dated under the radar, and like no one really knew about it besides like the security dude and stuff. It was nice because we got to like see the world together. And then as that relationship kind of got a bit more serious, and she went on to do other things, and I went and did other things with other artists, that it just became that much harder or more difficult to be away from her. Like I just didn't want to be, it was so much more enjoyable to like do life with her. And so when it was like, cool, like I'm going to Europe, and then I'm going to like, I'll be home in 6 weeks. Yeah. Like things like that's like an insane thing when you're used to seeing someone every day, to be like, cool, like see you in a month and a half. Yeah. And so I think like as my 30s kind of progressed, stuff like those relationships became more important to me. Yeah. And I knew like, I kind of around like 32, 30-ish, I felt like I got to a point in my career of touring that it was like, okay, like either we need to kind of start to figure out like what the exit strategy is, or like we're going to do this the rest of our life, which isn't like, I know a lot of people that tour that are older and like are incredibly happy, have very normal relationships, and like that's their thing. Like, not saying that like you can't tour when you're older. Like I'm not trying to say that. Like every life path is different for everybody. I just knew for me, like I wanted to eventually have a family. I wanted to eventually get married, all of these things. And I was like, it's going to be very difficult to have these things, I felt, with being gone 275 days a year.
That makes sense. And, just to lay it out there, maybe we've said this already, but just to kind of compact it, if somebody is going on the road, maybe they've done one tour, or maybe they've done, 10 years of touring, are there any things that really stuck out to you that were like the red flags of like, I need to get off the road? Was it mostly what you just mentioned, or was there anything that
I think it was mostly like kind of what I mentioned before, but also like I mean, I think mental health is now like there's finally like light kind of being shed on it from the touring thing, but like definitely like went through a lot of like seasonal depression in a way of like, like it just wasn't fun.
Hmm.
Like it wasn't fulfilling. Like it became a job, not all the time, like it kind of came in waves and stuff. But, I think some of the red flags is if you have these thoughts and stuff, I almost think it's better to like give yourself kind of like a timeline on it to be like, cool, like I'm going to write this down and then I'm going to revisit it in like 2 months
Hmm.
and see like where I'm at, like in my own state of mind. And it's like, if these thoughts are still there and you're feeling this way, then like that might be the catalyst that you need to be like, oh, cool. Like maybe like I've overextended my journey here.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, like it comes and goes. Like there's so many different things that, we don't talk about, whereas like maybe if you worked for a different artist that was like a different format or like a country artist, like, and that set up differently, like there's a lot of different things that go into touring and what makes you happy. So I don't think there's a correct answer in being right or wrong or like knowing when it's time to go. But I would just like, I think continue to like check in on like when you have like this self-doubt of being like, this might be my time to like move on to something else, like write it down and then like keep doing what you're doing, like don't like leave the tour unless it's like something catastrophic, but and then like revisit at a different time to be like, oh, like was this just like a funk that I was in, or like is this just something that I'm kind of done with in my life?
And I like what you said about, different tours being a different atmosphere. There is definitely a different way of touring depending on the genre. So, when you're first trying to get on tour, yeah, just take anything you can get. Just get on the road because like Danny said, he got all of his jobs from meeting all these people he met on the road. But then after you're out there, you can start kind of getting a little more picky, once you have the skills to be picky.
You got to have a plan. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like at least have like a thought or an idea of a plan of like where you want to go.
Just not do. Where?
I don't think you're ever going to really be fulfilled in that sense. Like if you're just like, oh, I'll just do this, I'll just do that. It's like, yeah, but like, what do you like want to do?
And that definitely changes with age and where you're at in life. And, I could definitely say that for a while I just threw stuff at a wall and hoped it sticked. And now I'm just trying not to do that as much. But yeah, that's some great advice. And, I think when people are on tour and, we talked with, we had Joey from the forum on here and he said that, a lot of people who tour don't get off tour because they're like, well, what else can I use my skills for? This is all I'm good at.
Yeah.
Well, you can work at local venues. You can work at the forum. Like you are very good at what you do if you can tour it. Or you can start a crazy business like you did. So what did you figure out you could do with your skills? Tell us. I love your current business. I want to know more about it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I started a house management company called DK Home Management. A little backstory. So I originally, when I was trying to get off the road, I was like, oh, I love houses. I'll become a real estate agent because that's like you deal with a bunch of different houses.
Yeah.
So like I got my real estate license, like all this, was doing all this thing. I was also like running like a VIP company at the time, like building that up. And so both were like fine, right?
Yeah.
Like it was a normal job. It was fine. I wasn't really getting anywhere on the real estate front because my other job that actually like paid the bills was taking up most of my time. And so I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I'm just not like really, like succeeding the way I thought I would. Like, I think I thought like it would be like $1 million listing and everyone would be like, oh yeah, like, of course, like, please come sell my $10 million house. My friend's dad is a really big realtor. And so I was like, hey, do you think he would take a call with me? And I was talking to him on the phone and I said, I'm running this other company, kind of building this. And that's like my normal thing. I'm trying to like do real estate because I think like there's a path for me there. But I just don't really have time for real estate. And it's just not going anywhere and I don't know what to do. And he was like, well, like, when do you like go to your normal job? And I go, oh, it's like 9 to 5. And I was like, he goes, okay, well, when are you doing real estate then? And I go, well, like 5 to 6:30 or like 6 to 8 and stuff. And I was like, I don't think it's going to work. And this was like a very big catalyst, which is the only reason I'm bringing it up is he basically told me, he was like, no, like it's not working because you're not good at it. He's like, it's not working because you're not working hard at it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? And he goes, if you really cared about real estate, like you'd come into your other job at 6 a.m. and you'd grind that till 2 o'clock. And then you would do real estate from 2 to 5 or 2 to 6.
Yeah.
He's like, you're just not putting enough effort into it. And at that point I was like, holy shit, like
he's right.
just like work harder. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like I never even thought about that. And so then I came up with this idea for kind of this home management company because I was like, okay, what are your skills? What are you good at? Well, like being a tech, like I'm good at kind of problem solving and in fixing things. Being assistant tour manager, like I'm good at logistics. I'm good at like managing a staff or a crew or a team. What do you like? I fucking like houses. Okay, how do we like spin this into a thing? And I was like, well, I could manage people's houses. And so then the next hurdle was like, okay, you have this company idea, but you don't have any clients.
Yeah.
And I was like, and everybody wants proof of concept.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like how many houses do you have now? Like that was like a big question. Like, who do you represent now? And it was like, well, like nobody.
Myself.
Yeah. So it ended up working in my favor. Alex from All Time Low had a house that he bought out in LA. I rented from him. And so basically I took care of his house and I used that to be able to be like, well, I have a client now that I represent.
That was your launching pad.
Yeah. That was like the proof of concept. And then basically I was at a party one night, and this kind of goes back to like just being like hangability.
Yeah, this is networking. Just to put it out there for anybody who we've talked about, this is networking. Like all this is why you have to live in LA for it. But keep going.
Yeah. And so like I was at this party, and I had seen this girl that I hadn't seen in a couple of years. Like they were over with all their friends, and she was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? Like it's been a while." And I was like, "Oh, I actually just started a house management company.
Yeah.
And I run people's houses and staff and make sure everything goes well." And she goes, "Oh my God, we need that." And I was like, cool. I was like, what are you doing? And she goes, "Oh, I work for Halsey."
Yeah.
And that was it. And then like, 2 weeks later, I took it on as a client, and like that kind of like started the ball rolling to what it is now.
That's awesome. Well, I love that, like, and people listen to the podcast are like, oh, we want to learn about touring. Why are you talking about house management? And the idea behind this is that there is so much you can do with networking that even if touring is just a 1-year stop in your life, like these skills are so applicable to so many things. And of course, not everywhere in the world needs a house manager. Like it's a very unique thing. LA is definitely, the density of people who need house manager is probably higher than most places. Yeah. But you find your house managing corner in your area, and you can make something work. And I like that you talked about, having some direction, having some, figure out where you don't want to be, figure out where you do want to be, use that to scare you, and figure out this to push you in what direction. And you made it happen.
So like I super enjoy it because it's like it's a new day. Like every day is different. And for me, as someone who works well with tasks, like that's important. Like I don't do well in like a repetitive situation in the sense of like I do the same thing every day. So this keeps it like unique and like interesting for me. So I don't get bored with it. I think there's like a lot of, avenues or jobs out there that you can apply whatever skill you learn from tour to this job, or you can like create your own job, like create something that you want to do. I will say that, for the first 2 years of it, I didn't make any money. Like I had another job, what I mean? Like it was like a full grind. Yeah. And so like, I don't want people to think that like, oh, wow, like you left touring and life is sick.
Yeah. It's hard work.
Yeah. Like it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of grinding. And I think eventually like the time and all the effort that you put into something does pay off. It's just working through it and like dredging through like the trenches to get to the other side where it starts to like fruit itself.
Yes. And to relate, that's where I'm at right now. That's where I'm at in a podcast. And, it's kind of like you get off tour and you try to do something, and I totally understand what you're saying. However, have you seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi? Have you seen that movie? Okay. This is just like,
sounds
what's
delicious.
Up? Yeah.
Sounds
it's
delicious.
so it's and I'm going to slaughter the specifics of it, but this is relative to what you just said, or relates to what you just said. But it's this guy who is a master sushi maker in Japan, I want to say. And every day he goes in and does the same thing. But he's really not doing the same thing because he's working on all these details. And I know that you said now you don't do the same thing every day, but from the outside looking in, you kind of just house manage every day. So you do the same thing, but you love it so much that you find all these unique things to improve on. So I think that's what's really cool about it is like, I get it with concert photography where people are like, how do you just shoot a concert every day? I'm like, well, that's what I'm doing on a base level, but I'm really, working on these little things. So yeah, that's awesome. I will hope one day that I can afford Danny Kurily's home management.
I'll come manage your house.
Yes. I mean, you did hook me up with a carpet.
It's true. Yeah, you got your nice rug. That's a jute rug. Very popular right now.
He showed up not a day later, maybe 2 days after I got here with a jute rug that I was like, we got to move everything and make this fix. It's awesome.
Mark loves it.
Mark loves it. And that is my cat, not a human I live with. Thank you for the jute rug.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, man. This was sick. Okay, speaking of manifesting, when are we going to Egypt?
Soon.
All right, sick. Let me know. No, this is awesome. I mean, I don't know. My goal for this podcast is I just wanted to know a little bit more about your journey and how you got on tour, off tour. And so for people that are on tour or are on tour, wherever they're in their touring phase, can kind of be like, oh, I'm here and this is what I need to do next.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I guess like my thing is that you don't have to get off tour. Like if you love it, fucking run it to the ground. You know what I mean?
Take the pieces that work for your life.
Yeah. Like just take something that, I mean, hopefully like a little bit was helpful to somebody at some point.
Well, that's the idea.
There's a lot of stuff to learn and to know. And I think as long as like we're continually trying to do better, we're continually trying to elevate like whatever it is you do to the next level, like you're going to be successful.
Yes.
Like it's going to happen.
It's going to work out.
Like manifest it, man. Like you got to like have a goal, have the vision, and then like things will work itself out.
What goes along with manifesting is working really freaking hard too. Like how Danny's saying.
But like looking back on it now, like the crazy thing is that like people are like, like, oh, like this is cool where you are in your life now. And it's like, yeah, but it's like, if it wasn't for the Rocket Summer or if it wasn't for All Time Low, this wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like in this capacity, like, yeah, like life and it goes in a gazillion different directions. But like, I think if you can be in the moment of whatever it is that you're doing and enjoy it and work hard at it, like good stuff will come from it. And you can then like continue on and grow that into something else eventually.
Hell yeah. No, I like that. When you said that when you're on the road, you kind of you don't have responsibilities and you're kind of just, food's there for you. You just get to hang out all day. That really stuck out to me because something I really struggled with, and maybe you can relate getting off the road, was I felt like I lived, because I was on the road from like similar age to you. I was 18 to 28 mostly, 29, 30 as well. I'm 32 now. But I felt like I was living my early 20s in my 30s. Like I felt like I was learning all these skills that I just missed. I don't know about you, but like house training myself. Yeah, it's like in a weird way because it's like you just like don't understand that like, oh, like I have to do like, what do you mean I can't just put my laundry in a bag and it comes back folded and clean? Like, wait, like there's just like a lot of things. I mean, my mom made me do my laundry as a kid, so I knew about stuff like that. There's just like life hacks that you don't necessarily like. You get spoiled early on and you're like, wait, like I can't just eat like frozen. I mean, I guess you can just eat frozen pizzas and stuff all the time, but it's interesting, man. It's a ride. And some people come home and they're like, oh, you mean I don't just have beer on tap all day? But then some people are Danny. It's true. I have beer on tap. I'm empty, but put a bar. I'm just trying to make it so I don't have to leave my house. You're on tour at home. I got my room signs. I got, like we Danny. See, look at that. I just pulled it off my wall. Boom. These are Danny made a production and like room signs for his wedding. So everybody at the house had like their name on the wall, and you knew where to go. I had an office that was a bunk bed. So that was really fun. Yeah, it was so cool. That was the most fun wedding. I still stand by, last year was great. This year was good, but I think next year might be even better if we do a third wedding. Yeah. Third time's a charm, they say. Luckily the same woman. So that's helpful. Yeah. It's consistent, Well, cool. I mean, thank you for coming on here, man. Dude, thank you for having me. This is great. Like, I love what you're doing. Like, I love, like, there isn't a thing like this. Yes. And I feel like, I mean, growing up, like, this would have been so cool to at least have, like, this database of knowledge that's like, oh, like, this is what this is. This is what this means. Yeah. Like, I felt like we were so blind out there, like, just kind of, like, running it wide open and just burn it till the wheels fall off. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm thankful. I don't know about you, but my ignorance to the requirements of like achieving a certain task sometime let me start working towards that task. Sure. Because as soon as I realize everything that it takes, I'm like, oh shit, what do we start doing? Like maybe a podcast is a good example. I'm like, oh, everything's hard. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. No, but
Shit.
I thank you for believing in it and taking time on here. And I mean, I can't let you get out of here with our final question, which is, do you wear shower shoes?
In my shower?
No, on tour.
Oh, on tour? No, I don't.
Nice. I'm team no shower shoes too. It's like we ask everybody, and I would say everybody's pretty confident that their answer is correct.
Yeah, I've never had anything happen because of the non-shower shoes. I've never gotten like a wart or anything like that. Only one time I did wear my socks.
Ooh, that must have been a really weird shower or a really weird
Yeah,
day.
but it was a gross venue, and so I was like, not gonna do that.
Yeah, that's fair. The key is you always shower before the band members. That's how you get a good shower. No, I'm just kidding. That might not.
I just shower on the bus.
Yeah. There's no shower, just baby wipes and bottled water and iced water.
Warped Tour days.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Danny. I look forward to putting this out, and I hope everybody had a good time with us.
Dude, thank you for having me.